All right, guys, we're gonna get going here.
Did you sing or
I see that. They got me. I don't know if anybody, oh, here we go. Here's a sign-in sheet. I don't know if anybody has a pen. Let me get this thing going around. Can somebody bring me a pen from out there? You can shut that door. A pen, a writing utensil. Pen. All right. Good evening, everybody. All right, so does everyone know what they're here for? This is a family recovery group. Like I've said before, if you were here for the PTA meeting or yoga, I'm not going to get any of that tonight. This is a family recovery group. And last week we talked about, or I guess it was last week. Was I here last week?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about, I want to provide the information that people need, but I don't want to be too repetitive. So this idea of the basics. We don't want anybody walking out without a clear understanding of what they're dealing with. What is this thing called substance use disorder? What is this thing called addiction? That kind of stuff. So I am going to go over that really, really quick. I'm going to hit it hard, and you guys can stop me with any clarifying questions. What else is on your mind tonight? What else do you want to know about? What other burning questions do you have? I can go over things like I always do, but what else you got on your mind? Yes?
I spoke with Dory on Sunday. She helped me get my son into a placement on Monday because they were ready to kick him to the curb. And I took him to Myrtle Beach, and he's down there in the Lighthouse Center for a 28-day program. So it's been 1 week tonight. But they've already moved him into another unit because he doesn't want to do the program. He's like lying and saying he's got 4 dates and so to get out. So is there any suggestions of how to keep him there?
Yes. So, I mean, this thing called AMA, leaving against medical advice, is what you'll hear people talk about.
Yes.
So, to orient everybody in the room, that happens whenever a person goes to a treatment center, or really any type of facility, any type of program, and they don't do what they're supposed to do, and they don't handle the situation in the way they're supposed to handle it. A couple different things can happen. You can get administratively discharged, which is kicked out. That's when the staff say you can no longer be here. Also, people will leave against medical advice. That's when the person leaves. They could be staying, but they choose to leave. And the question was, what can you do to try to help keep them there? And it's actually going to relate to a lot of stuff I talk about right at the jump. But the problem is the person, regardless of what their personality was like before they started using the substances, whether they were an obstinate kind of willful person, stubborn, that kind of thing, or whether they were really, really compliant, nice to everybody, people pleaser, it doesn't. Once you start using the substances, your thinking starts to change, right? You don't think rationally. Your brain literally changes. And so people going to a facility and wanting to leave is not unusual. People going to a facility and not complying is not unusual. The question is, what can a family do? And unfortunately, the most honest answer is you can't do a lot because you're not there, right?
No, he's in Myrtle Beach.
And even if he was here in Greenville, you really wouldn't actually be able to be in the program.
No.
So, some of the things that you'll hear people say, and again, these are options that are wide-ranging, and no one can tell you what you should do in your particular situation. A lot of people will be given advice like, well, don't go pick him up if he gets kicked out. Okay, you'll hear people talk about that. Don't, quote unquote, rescue him. What's the logic there? Anybody know?
They'll go back?
They might go back and they might comply because they don't have anywhere to stay, and it won't be comfortable. That I didn't think of that, but that is absolutely an option. What other logic would there be in that situation? It's just straight up enabling him if you go pick him up.
Yeah.
That's what you'll be told.
Doing the same thing, expecting a different result.
That's the kind of thinking. So they'll probably tell you that, for example, if a person is asked to leave, the staff will probably call the family and say, here's what went down. You know, he was not compliant, he's gone, you shouldn't go pick him up. You know, we're sorry that it worked out this way. You're gonna hear this from other people too. And what you find is parents, family members, they struggle with that decision at different times, depending on how old the person is and where they are and whether they think they're safe or not. So there's no right or wrong answer. I can see the argument for don't go pick him up, but at the same time, I think that it's a little bit disingenuous for folks like me to look at you and say don't go pick him up and act like it's a easy decision. It's not going to be an easy decision.
No, but most people think it is, unless it's one of their loved ones.
And I don't know if you guys all could hear the comment. The comment was most people think it's easy. Most people where drug and alcohol treatment and drug and alcohol recovery services are concerned, they think it's as easy as telling somebody what to do. So it's like, hey, Rich, have you ever thought about not eating 24 Percocet and drinking a case of beer a night? Oh, I never thought of that, right? Or, hey, family member, stop enabling. As if that's as easy as it gets. And then also, you will feel judged if you don't do what they tell you to do. Then as a family member, you will feel worse about yourself. You'll now start to label yourself part of the problem. You'll start to label yourself an enabler. And I want to go on the record and tell you that people can enable, absolutely. And I've talked to people who the only answer is, you have to change. Do you follow me? Like, I understand why that advice is given. I understand why it comes up because it's absolutely there are seats up here, guys, if anybody needs any. I understand 100% why. I just don't think it should be given across the board in every single situation. And it's very individualized on what you're going to want to do in any given circumstance. What are the factors that you guys would take into consideration on whether or not you go, let's use the term bail that person out, or you go rescue that person who's being pushed out of the treatment center? What are the factors that you might use to make that decision on whether you go or not?
Their personal safety.
So safety is a huge deal, right? Where are they? Are there other options? Where can they go if they do have to leave? And related to that, age usually has something to do with it. It tends to be the younger the person is, the more difficult it is for the family to step back and hold this boundary. Let's remember, what's the general idea that you're trying to do? You're dealing with somebody who's not thinking clearly. You're dealing with somebody who, I'm going to show you this process. By definition, they can't use the part of your brain that makes decisions. So the family is taught set boundaries. Friends are taught set boundaries. Start to put the person in a position where they have to do something against their own will. And that's where not picking them up would come in. That's also where asking them to leave the house if they're living at your house would come in. It's where, I'm not going to pay the rent if you continue to spend. It's all those things with that objective to have that happen on the back end. But what we know is it's usually harder if the person is younger. I mean, if you're dealing with somebody and you've been dealing with them for the last 20 years and they go off to treatment, a lot of times it's kind of like, okay, you figure it out. You left.
Yeah. And in my situation, it has been 20 years.
Yeah, and you might be at the point where you're just sort of exhausted with it.
I am.
Yeah.
This is the last stand.
And if that's where you're at, you want to honor that feeling. Do you guys get that? You don't want to talk yourself out of that by being guilty, by being anxiety-ridden. That's a legit thing. 20 years is a long time to deal with any particular addiction issue.
But I only got to that last stand by starting to come to here.
By coming to Favor Greenville.
Yes.
Yeah, give it up for Favor Greenville. That's what I'm talking about. Yep. And so, absolutely. And I hope what you mean by that is you get information, you get knowledge, you find out that you're not alone in this process, and your feelings and your thoughts are not completely unique. A lot of people have gone through them. You can live through your loved one getting kicked out of a treatment center. You can live through that, and it's likely that they probably are much more resourceful than you think. It's likely that there's a way to figure this out. I've heard, people will get rides from other people, that kind of thing.
Well, they can also work with their social worker.
Well, this would be if they're getting kicked out of the facility. The social worker is kind of done at that point. They're saying you got to go. Well, just for the record,
Walks out.
yeah, they don't do much for you. Remember, the general default I hate to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The general default in treatment is you either do what I tell you or we're going to punish you. And it's not punished like cruel and unusual punishment. It's under this label of accountability and consequences and stuff, but no social worker's finding a way for that person home. Nope. Maybe if they're coming out of a hospital, they would. Perhaps if they're coming out of a psychiatric institute, they would. But if you're coming out of a rehab and you didn't do what the staff told you to do, get going, dude.
It's a curve.
Get going, girl, and come back when you want it.
I said hit the curb.
Yeah. So let's go through what's going down with somebody who's addicted, and so we understand why they would bother going to treatment and then leave 2 days later or get themselves kicked out. Remember, we talked about this last time, 3 different scenarios that mainly contribute. One is you're born with less dopamine in your brain. You just simply do not produce dopamine. The pleasure chemical is not there for you. The second one is co-occurring disorders. Maybe you suffered from trauma. Maybe you suffered from anxiety disorder. And that's the second one, co-occurring disorders, and the third is trauma. Co-occurring disorders is the self-medicating theory. I'm using alcohol to deal with anxiety. You guys have all heard that, right? Trauma is the escape theory. I cannot deal with this memory of what happened to me, so taking pills allows me to step off of that. And other things that come into it, how old you are when you first start using. Gender is interesting. More women may meet criteria for substance use, but more men are identified. Anybody have a theory as to why that would be?
We hide it better.
Yeah, you're a little more quiet. It's less likely for women to be downtown punching each other in the face, getting arrested by police, right? Their style of using is a little bit more socially acceptable, flies under the radar. Substance specific, certain drugs are more addictive than others, and then how long you've been doing it. So let's talk about what happens. It's all about dopamine. Dopamine is released in the brain anytime you do anything pleasurable. The problem is when you put alcohol in your body or you put drugs in your body, you release an inordinate amount of dopamine. So when you eat good food, dopamine is released. It's increased by about 50%. When you use methamphetamine, it's increased by 1,300%. When you use alcohol, it's about 500%. You're flooding your brain with an unusual amount of dopamine. And what that looks like is this. So you're supposed to be here on any given day, but you're walking. Interesting question. It's not why do people use in the first place. You guys understand that about 90% of Americans have drank alcohol. You guys get that? So it's not why did they use in the first place, it's people use. People use. The difference is some people get a bigger payoff than others. And so when I'm walking around like this, dealing with trauma, dealing with fear, anxiety, and the first thing I used was alcohol. It goes through the roof, and I get a bigger payoff than people who aren't dealing with that. So if you get a payoff, it's standard psychology, pleasure and pain. I want to do it again, so I go back and do it again. But what happens is, as I do it, I'm flooding my brain with dopamine, so my brain starts to shut off the production of dopamine to try to balance things out. And now it brings me back to a 6. But I still know where to get this stuff, and I know that there might be more, or there might be other substances. So I do it again, and I'm still getting the effect I want. It backs me off again, so on and so forth. And what you can see, guys, is over time, I'm getting no payoff from using. And I'm using to try to feel normal, not to get to euphoria. This is called addiction, right? This is heavy partying. And this is the strange stuff that starts to go on. This is what it looks like in a person's brain. Right here on your left is what it should look like. This is firing in all cylinders. This is the dopamine is firing. You can feel the day. Everything's fine. It doesn't mean you're happy all the time. It doesn't mean everything's great. But basically, you can feel normal contentment. If dopamine is shut off and it's the pleasure neurotransmitter, what's going to happen? You are unable to feel contentment. So a normal activity that should be fine, going out to dinner, going to a birthday party, going fishing, is unacceptable because the whole time you're walking around with, you can't literally experience what everyone else is experiencing. And what are you thinking? I gotta get a hold of this stuff. This stuff will make it a little better. I gotta get a hold of this stuff. This is the psychological compulsion of drinking. This is the stuff that leads to all the things that don't make sense. I know I got to be at work in the morning, and I wind up going out and I stay out till 4 in the morning because I'm just trying to feel better. It's interesting when you develop a problem. I can remember this very well. You go for this point in time when you're drinking. Let's just use alcohol because it's the most common substance, where you will feel a moment of relief. I call it a window, is what I call it. You're in the window at maybe drink 3 or 4. Let's just say. But the problem is that goes away really quick and you compulsively go for it and you can never get back to the window. So you wind up drinking 20 drinks and staying out all night and maybe doing other things. Do you guys see this? It literally, you're pouring in an empty bucket. But you don't know that and you're just looking for anything that's going to make you feel better. So you chase it and you do all these self-destructive things. And that's the stuff that leaves family members, friends, police, healthcare providers, everyone just scratching their head like, what is wrong with these people? What are we going to do with them? Why would he do it again? Why would she do that again? There's nothing logical about it. So we're going to talk about, boundaries tonight. We're going to talk about how to have conversations, but you got to understand this process. I'm not making excuses for anyone. There's no way to figure it out. And I've been in so many conversations personally and professionally with people where they've been trying to figure out why he's doing it. Have you ever had that experience? You feel like that you can get to that thing or that concept where you're going to understand it. It'll be like this light bulb moment where everyone will kind of feel better, but understand like they don't even understand why they're doing it. I didn't even understand why I was doing it. When I was doing it, when I want to say it was on automatic pilot, I say this a lot. Like, I loved my mom. When I was putting her through that stuff, like, there was never a consideration of like, what am I doing to her? What am I doing to my wife? What am I doing to my kids? It just happened, guys. And that's because it became something other than a choice. It becomes a compulsion. You're literally driven to get a hold of it the same way you would be if you were starving and you smelled food. Or if you were thirsty and you saw water and you needed to get a drink. Any questions about this? Good news is, over time, it reverses itself. It goes back. So I am now fully functioning. I'm firing on all cylinders. That's right. It's good stuff. But the problem is I still have to deal with this issue. Even though recovery means what? You get back to where you were. It doesn't mean you get back above where you were. So if I don't learn how to deal with the original vulnerability, what's going to happen? I'm putting myself at risk to go get whatever it is that I like. You guys get that part? This is why somebody in recovery 3 years, 5 years would go back out and drink. This is why somebody in recovery 20 years would go back out and drink, because this thing is still there. It's like there's a pebble in your shoe, and eventually you're going to either deal with it the right way or deal with it the wrong way. And this is that version of that. It could be core issues. Maybe something happened to you were a kid you have to deal with and work through. It could be changing your lifestyle in other ways to support a healthy lifestyle. It could be working through relationship issues. Some people, this issue was just job related, and they were so stressed out and so miserable, and they never were able to acknowledge it until they popped, right? You have to deal with life over here if you're going to maintain this, and that's what we call recovery. And people, how long do you have to do that? How long do you have to go at it? Well, look, there's no magic formula. We believe in multiple pathways. We believe you can get recovery multiple ways, but we do know that in terms of stability, you're not really stable until 5 years. At 5 years, relapse rates drop below 10%. So if you're, for the first year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, if you're hanging out with people who aren't supportive, if you're going to places that support using, if your profession puts you in circumstances like that. So for example, I had to change my job, man. I had to give up what was a pretty decent career for the most part because it involved heavy alcohol use. It was just part of the definition. Do you see what I had to do? I had to move away from that. I could go do that job now in a minute. and it wouldn't bother me at all. But early on, your brain is recovering. And again, 5 years seems to be the magic number. Relapse rates go down year over year, don't get me wrong. And things that you can do to get better include the following. Therapy, right? Talking to somebody one-on-one seems to help. Talking to a coach, talking to a sponsor, whatever it is. Also, being in a group setting can help. Changing your lifestyle, if it was work-related, for example, go to bed earlier, back off what you're doing, monitor your life, eat right, try to take care of yourself so you're not putting yourself in such a stressful situation. This is where people go wrong, though. They think, and this isn't what you're doing, but let's just use your example because you're talking about your daughter. Son. You know, they think that you can literally go to a rehab and you'll be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
We just get you through this rehab, you're going to go. Here's the other thing. Everybody thinks that rehab is necessary too. What if I told you only about 13% of people who are in recovery report that rehab had anything to do with it?
Yeah.
Do you get where I'm coming from? So the way the world works is we want an answer for a sickness and an illness and an issue. We want to know if Frank comes to Rich's facility, he's going to be dipped in the waters of recovery, fixed, and go back home, and then everything's going to go back to normal. We're all going to be good.
Well,
Yes?
They tell me that jail or prison is the best rehab that there is. That's what
Well, I mean, theoretically, they can't leave there quite as easy, right?
They can't get the drugs quite as easy. But they can't get them.
So-
They get it, but not as easy.
Or the answer isn't even being in a facility, guys. A lot of times people figure it out in the community. You know, they figure it out by moving forward and keeping trying and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. So I don't want to act like rehab's not necessary either. And I have known people who've gone to jail and that was a blessing in disguise. But what I'm telling you is there is no magic solution to this situation. There is no circumstance where if this person does, I'm going to give you an example of something that doesn't happen as much here at Favor Greenville, but still goes on. And it's very flattering to me that this happens, all right? But it's so unrealistic. People think that if they can get their loved one to talk to me, then I'm going to be able to do some kind of voodoo and tighten them up. And, you know, we ran with that for a long time as an organization because the organization was kind of just me. And I would see everybody, I would talk to everybody, but I can't do that now. Now, if I'm talking to somebody every week, I could see something happen, or if I meet with somebody on a semi-regular basis. But I don't know anybody that can actually have a conversation with somebody one time and change them. If you find that person, I have got to meet them. I just don't know how. I bet it happens occasionally, but I don't think, you get where I'm coming from? That this is a process. This is a process that it'll unfold over time, man. And it's much more likely to be one step forward, two steps back, then maybe some progress, then maybe a little bit back, and that's the normal course. Why do people tie themselves to the idea of let's get them in to see Rich or let's get them off to rehab? What's the main reason people tie themselves to that?
We want an instant fix. That's
So you want to fix, I get that.
And you've done it.
And I've done it, yep. And also, it's the fear factor kicks in, right? If we were talking about some other behavior change, you would be more patient with it, right? Hey, I'm trying to change my diet. One step forward, two steps back. Okay, cool. I get it. But this comes with this heavy duty, worst case scenario attachment to it. And what you wind up having is you don't really have a situation where it's a lapse or a recurrence. It's here we go again. It is 100% what it was before, and therefore we got to get them into a facility before they die, or some. And I completely understand where that's coming from, guys. I completely understand that. But I also want to tell you that you got to be careful because you've been conditioned to think that because people have actually told you, get them in today, they're gonna die. That's to drive the industry more than it is reality. You got the rehab mentality is really it's a caricature of the actual recovery process. It's what you always see on the TV shows. Why? Well, because Favor Greenville is pretty freaking boring. It's pretty boring. Nothing. Like people come to meetings and get better. Oh well, that's not made for TV. What's made for TV?
Drama.
Just enough drama where somebody blesses somebody out, runs out the door, dramatic music plays, but the interventionist chases them and has the magic words. And the person agrees to go, and they get on a plane, they fly to Panama, and then they have it like where it cuts to 9 months later. And everybody's like, hey, it's great, man. This is awesome. I love my interventionist. But for every one of those, what are there? There's 10 others that nothing happened, and they didn't go anywhere. And really, they started an outpatient program rather than rehab, and they also got better. But it doesn't work for TV. It's not sensationalistic. The truth is, recovery is it's a process that can be pretty darn boring at times. Yes.
So do they not have to go somewhere to get clean?
Well, I want to tell you that, like, it's very individualized. Some people do. Don't get me,
I mean, just to kind of get the initial.
Yeah, but most people don't. I mean, do you guys get that? Statistically speaking, the overwhelming majority of people, literally 87%, don't. But understand that there's no business model that supports that idea. The business model supports heads in beds. So you're not going to hear it. I kind of feel like the fact that I have this on Facebook might get me assassinated for even saying it, because this is not, I'm not even supposed to be saying this.
Or your friends at centers.
It's really just, that is more about the profession than it is about the actual recovery process. But it is necessary. There is this thing that people will need to be, it's called behaviorally contained, which is a fascinating psychological world where, I mean, that does not sound like compassion to me. That sounds like you're locking me up, but that's what it's called. Behaviorally contain a person. Nobody gets in, nobody gets out. 30 days. You're not going anywhere. You leave there with what? Your body flushed out, your brain flushed out, you're good to go. How do you know who needs to be behaviorally contained? The first thing is you kind of know it in your gut. They're out of control. They're usually getting physically hurt. They're drinking or using at such a level where at any given day, if you got the call and you found out the worst news, you wouldn't even be completely surprised. All right? It's literally dangerous. Do you follow me? Now, where opioids are concerned, it gets really weird because you could say any use is dangerous, right? But when I was drinking at the level I was drinking, anything could have happened. And when I was taking these pills before fentanyl and carfentanil, anything could happen, but it was highly unlikely that I was going to die. That's just true. It wasn't a likely outcome. So they could wait it out on me a little longer. The progression, my family could wait. They could wait. I had all these experiences. I had all this time that went by. But whenever it's dangerous, it's a very hard call. Yes?
One thing that's been encouraging to me in the past few months is that with the heroin, as a coach, I used to want to get them to treatment right away just so they wouldn't die from an overdose.
Right.
But now with MAT, you don't even have to do that. You know, you can do that outside of it.
And again, we're saying when you're talking about getting to rehab, I mean you can get people to treatment in the community
What
too.
is
So
MAT?
medication-assisted treatment. Medication-assisted treatment is drug replacement therapy, if you want to call it that.
Oh, like Suboxone and
Suboxone, yes. We support that 100%. We support that wholeheartedly. We know that people will handle that in many different ways, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution. I have some issues right now because people are pushing only MAT, and I don't believe in that either. It's multiple pathways. It's different strokes for different folks. This thing manifests itself in us differently, and we all get recovery differently. But that whole she's in danger, he's in danger vibe, right? That's the hardest part of this equation. That's what you have to monitor and try to figure out. So we know the type of drug that's being used feeds into that. Opioids definitely. How about on the alcohol end? How do you judge alcohol? Because remember, alcohol statistically is hands down the most dangerous drug. Alcohol directly contributes to the death of 88,000 people a year, but it's over a long period of time. So it doesn't look the same way. But you can also drink too much where you'll have alcohol poisoning. You can also have bad things can happen when you're drinking, right? Alcohol tends to bring out the worst in people's behaviors. Their inhibitions go way down. Their ability to control themselves goes way down. They take risks that they wouldn't otherwise take. Those are the type of things that you would consider when you start talking about it. What other issues would feed into whether or not it's DEFCON 5 and you have to do something about it immediately?
Their environment.
meaning that they're using around and are in circumstances that's dangerous. Because when you use certain things, you put yourself around certain people. Yep, that's exactly right. And sometimes the only way to get that is to get them somewhere where they can think clearer. I agree with that. You guys get that one? The living environment, the living arrangement. A couple other things would be co-occurring mental health issues. Suicidality would be something that comes up quite a bit. That kind of stuff. That would feed into the idea of what you need to do. Yes, sir.
If a person drinks to a point where they become chronic, does it then raise the chances of suicide or the tendency to want to?
So substances are almost always involved with suicide. Okay, but there's no. It's different for different people on how that plays itself out. We know for sure that alcohol is a central nervous system depressant, and even though you get that initial feeling of euphoria, it will exacerbate and drive down depression. Absolutely. So it'll make it worse. It'll also eliminate the impact of any kind of medication that people are on.
Wouldn't the stigma have something to do with that too?
What do you mean?
Well, if somebody's in a culture where drinking is a no-no in their home and they keep drinking, or, I'm doing wrong, I know I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, you can get into situations. It's a little another version of what Carolyn said with the living arrangement, right? There's different circumstances where it's going to be harder to see the danger because it's normal. I mean, the best example of that is a college campus.
Yeah.
Make no mistake, on any given college campus, there are a major league number of people that are drinking at a very dangerous level.
Yeah.
Do you understand, like according to the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse, heavy drinking is considered more than 5 drinks on any one occasion. That's binge drinking. I mean, I look at that and I'm like, that was like Wednesday at 2:00. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. You'll see on these college campuses, people are reaching a level that's dangerous, that isn't even within the range of what the federal government thinks is actually heavy drinking. So that could be part of it. But the deal is there has to be here, I'll give you some advice. It has to be a pattern, right? It can't be one bad day. It can't even be 2 bad days. There has to be an established pattern that makes you know that if I don't do anything, this is going to continue. And where recovery is concerned, substance use, what happens is people will be doing okay for a while, then they'll have this bad period, and you will automatically go back to where they were in your thinking. So you have to, that's where stepping back, taking a deep breath, and trying to figure out what to do with them is very, very important. But understand, man, I don't judge that at all. I totally get it because it's bad stuff that led you to come here and get this information, right? So you're here because you are traumatized to a certain degree. You love these people. You don't want to wait. But I guess what I would say is expand your thoughts on what it means to get treatment and get recovery. Beyond you got to go get into a facility. Do you guys get it? I'm not saying you don't do anything. What I'm saying is you probably have more options than you believe. What other questions about that? Yes, sir.
Generally speaking, I don't know if there's a general answer, but does antidepressant medicine and drinking, what happens in that situation?
So you're not going to necessarily have an adverse reaction if you're on it, but what it'll do is it'll kind of erase the therapeutic effects of the medicine. The medicine, most antidepressant medicines, SSRIs, build up in your body and they take time to take an effect. And if you're drinking on anything that resembles a regular basis, you're not going to get the therapeutic effect. But you're not necessarily going to have a terrible reaction. It's not recommended at all, but it's not dangerous like drinking on benzodiazepines or drinking on even opioid pain pills and alcohol, real bad juju, right? It'll be different than that, but it's going to erase the effect.
Well, you said the depression drives you down, and when you've taken an antidepressant, seems like kind of a...
Yeah, well, if you're taking antidepressant meds and not drinking, they will work. They are designed to bring you up, okay? If you're drinking, that's less likely to happen. But antidepressants will work. Not for everyone, there's no guarantee, but for the most part, people will say I drank because I was depressed. The point that I would make with that is that's actually counterintuitive because it's a central nervous system depressant. Alcohol, like if you said to me, I do cocaine because I'm depressed, I would say to you, that makes more sense. Now listen, if anybody's depressed in here, do not go do cocaine. All right? But, because that's a stimulant that brings you up. But when you say I drink because I'm depressed, that's actually very counterintuitive, because it's a central nervous system depressant. So you're not bringing yourself up, you're pushing yourself down.
But what if somebody stops taking their antidepressants?
Well, then it's just you and the alcohol and the feeling that got you to the antidepressant in the first place, right?
You just stop taking the antidepressant.
You shouldn't do that.
During the seizures.
Yeah.
Well, you shouldn't do that. You won't go into seizures if it's an SSRI. You should not stop taking any medicine. Remember exactly how non-compliant Americans are in general. Listen, I'm reading a book right now. I told you last week. I'm telling you, it's the greatest book. It's called Nudge, and it's behavioral, kind of behavioral economics and sociology, social psychology, and it's like, why do we do what we do? And the quote is, we think that people will do the right thing if they know what the right thing is. And nobody does that. There are certain, so America has been set up in medicine, for example, to tell Rich that he has slight high blood pressure and that he should immediately change his work habits, change his eating habits, get more sleep, right? And my response is to go out and work 88 hours that week and hammer Big Macs on the way home, right? You get the point. I didn't listen at all. I didn't follow I'm a non-compliant patient. I should be kicked out of the doctor's office for non-compliance. But we go back to this thing where this has nothing to do with telling a person what's right or wrong. Most of your loved ones know. I mean, I gotta be honest with you, I don't know that I've ever met anybody that came into Favor Greenville that did not understand that they were destroying themselves. The deal is, how do you psychologically get them to move to start making different decisions? And does that take behavioral containment? Now, what we know for sure is, regardless of its behavioral containment, we do know for sure that it takes long-term commitment, all right? That people get better if they stick to it. Whatever it is, you follow me? If it's AA meetings, if it's NA meetings, if it's Favor meetings, if it's individual therapy. This study was done where what you have is you have two different variables. You have stress. When you first enter recovery, stress goes way down. Why is that?
Everything's
Well, everything's getting better. Your wife no longer wants to kill you in your sleep. You're kind of like a little bit less jumpy. But then over time, it starts to go back up, because what? Life shows back up. People aren't happy. Like, I remember when I was first in recovery, it was like, I could do no wrong, man. It was just, they were just glad that I wasn't stealing anybody's Vicodin out of the medicine closet and getting drunk at the 4th of July party. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool, but over time, you have to show back up to life, and so stress starts to go back up. The problem is, most people quit over here. Most people quit in the period of time when they actually probably are going to be okay. Why do people quit doing things that are good for them? How many people have ever made a New Year's resolution and they didn't stick to it? I don't believe any of you that didn't raise your hand. All that means is you never made a resolution. Okay? We've all had intentions of changing something and not been able to follow through. What happens when we stop doing it? What's the reasons?
Just get tired of it.
It's hard.
So it's hard to stick to behavior change, period. It's a new habit and it takes a while. Some of the other reasons people change is the consequences and the motivating factor that had you start is no longer there. Because you're doing well, the stress goes away. Your boss backs off. Your job becomes secure. So it's easy it's tonight, I should be going to my AA meeting, I should be going to see my therapist, but you know what? There's a really good episode of Friends on, so I'm going to kick it and stay home. And if I stay home once, it's easier to stay home twice. And the next thing you know, you're totally disengaged from any recovery process. I got to tell you something. For people who've had any type of recovery, and what I mean by that, for people who've been doing okay, this is the deal, man. They just quit. Almost to a person. They can identify what they were doing, and it's not always meetings. Like, for example, a therapist. I was seeing a therapist, and things were going along pretty well. Wasn't perfect, but pretty well. And then I haven't talked to anybody for 6 months. Can you see the what's around the corner? You know, people just stop going for other reasons, like things like they tell themselves, "I'm better, I'm fixed, I'm good." The statistics don't support that, but I'm good. What other reasons do people stop going?
They say, my son says, I can control it this time.
So you talk yourself into the idea that it's not necessarily, I really probably didn't even need to go the first time.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if circumstances change, people will sometimes pull out of the process. If you move for a job, if you break up with your wife or your girlfriend, if the circumstances change, people will change. Yes?
Or if it's mandated and you meet your...
Oh, wow, that's a really good one. Did you guys hear that one?
Yeah.
So a lot of times people go because they have to go. It was mandated by work. It was mandated by the law. And then that's up and you stop going. That's a really, really, very clear, definitive one. That how do we keep people engaged, and why are we telling family members? This all gets back to this idea of trying to keep a perspective on it and knowing that it's not that we want you to be anxious all the time, not at all, but you want to stay here with these issues, guys. You do not want to go up here when things are going great, like, we got this, he's in rehab, yes, right? But you don't want to go down here whenever things aren't so good. It's just, can you start to develop this idea of, if we're on this for the long haul, let's take a measured look at this thing. This deal that I deal with my son, with my 6-year-old son. I mean, I feel like it's very, very analogous to what y'all, like this. I felt it was a life-threatening situation. Straight up, man. His airway closed. He had to be rushed, flown to a children's hospital and intubated, and in a drug-induced coma for 4 or 5 days until they figured out why that happened. And then it happened a second time. And it hasn't happened for 8 months. But he's got a cold right now. All right? And he coughed the other night. And I slept in his room. Okay? And I didn't get any sleep. And I was super restless. And I was real jumpy. But I think that, if I say that to the average person, they probably understand why. That's exactly what your existence is like if you have a loved one dealing with this. And you've ever seen them go through the worst end of that. And listen, that isn't, when we're doing what we're doing is putting our family through that, you need to understand, there's no conscious decision there. We're not bad people doing that, right? It's happening because of the brain issue. Yes?
So it's not a conscious decision to look us straight in the eye and lie to us?
So you have to ask yourself, what is the factor? Why would I lie to you? Okay, and I can give you some phraseology that. So I would lie to you, Carolyn, to protect my addiction. Okay, I would lie to you because if I tell you the truth, I'm taking a chance that I won't be able to get a hold of this stuff. All right, either right now or in the future. So the question actually isn't why would I lie. The question is why would I protect my addiction. If you want to say why would I, you got to go back to the brain on why I would protect my addiction. Do you follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so you'll see people use different methods to maintain their addiction. Not everybody handles it the same way. Some people are really, really charming and they're manipulative and they will. Other people will try to intimidate.
That's next.
Do you see what I'm saying? And maybe that's what comes next. Some people they wind up stealing to support their habits. Some people wind up working epic hours to support their habits. It's not the same, but it's all related to I'm afraid to let this thing go.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to let this thing go. Well, what is this thing? This substance that has become this lifeline to me, this substance that has taken on this different level to me. I'm not going to let that go easily, man. I'm going to try to do everything I can to figure this thing out. And if that means I got to look you in the eye and say, no, I wasn't drinking, or no, it's not that bad. Absolutely. People always say to me, Rich, George is coming to see you, and I need to tell you exactly what he's done for the last 13 years. All right? So it'll be like a list of the substances that he's done. And I want you to know this because he's going to lie. All right? So I used to just think about that, but then I say back to them, I want you to understand that I fully expect him to lie. and I have no intention on actually asking him how much he used of anything. You guys get that? Because you're not going to get the truth. All right?
Wasting your breath.
I'm wasting my breath. What am I going to try to do? Hey man, tell me exactly what's up. How is alcohol treating you? How's it working for you? Don't talk to me about how much you're doing. Don't talk to me about last time you used. How's it going, man? If you can explain to me, if Phil can explain to me how you can be a recreational crack cocaine user, have at it. Let's figure this out. You get where I'm coming from? Because if you think that you're going to get them to tell you the truth and that has anything to do with a person getting better, it doesn't. See, again, you've been told lies. You've all been told lies, because what is the lie? A person has to admit they're an alcoholic. They have to admit they're an addict. They have to come up for their behavior. It's punishment. It's puritanical punishment. And people, if it's addiction, it'll never work. Do you follow me? Because your brain is already fried. You're not going to respond to puritanical punishment. You're going to respond to therapeutic interventions, which will usually be initiated because your circumstances start to change and you realize you're kind of up against it and your values and your behaviors don't line up, so you're going to start to work on it. And the sooner you get in on that conversation with anybody, the better. So rather than do they need to go to rehab, the deal is what can they connect to and who can they connect to no matter what. Okay, so if we go back to this situation, and let's say the deal is, okay, I'm not as worried about it, and the boundary isn't going to be go to rehab, it's going to be do something, get started. So the deal is if a person gets started with people like me and places like this, and we are welcoming and opening and we're talking to them and we're not preaching to them, what I have found is in many, many cases they start to come to their own conclusions. And here's how their conclusions go down. We'll take different substances. If you talk about alcohol first, just the most common, it will rarely be I quit altogether. I knew that if I went and talked to anybody about a drug or alcohol issue, they were going to tell me I had to quit. Do you guys get that? I knew it. How did I know it? I don't even know how I knew it. AA, I guess, maybe TV, but I knew that the deal was if you said you had a problem, you had to quit. So I consciously refused to say I had a problem because I wasn't going to quit. If somebody would have said to me, can we talk about this and you don't have to quit? I am certain I would have come to a conclusion sooner. I'm certain of it. I would have just started talking because remember, I didn't talk to anybody until I had to. And I would have said something along the lines of, hey man, listen, it's not that bad. I get it. I've had a bad run, but I'm going to back off. And if this would have been if I'd have been talking to me, which is a really weird thing to say, right? From like a freaking bizarre idea. But that would be cool. I think I would have done a good job with me. Well, me now, talking to me now, and because I would have said, well, what is a reasonable amount to drink? And I'd have given some education around drinking, and I'd have probably said something about 5 drinks at a time, and I'd have said, hey man, let's see if you can do that and come back and see me again next week. And then when they came back and I said, how did that go? And they said, well, not too good. I drank 25. I don't even know what happened. Do you see the mileage you're getting out of the conversation? Yeah. But the moment I look at that person and say, hey, Phil, you got to go to rehab today. Everybody's worried about you. Let's go. Let's get you in the car. What's Phil going to do? He's going to run the other way. He's going to come back and he's going to tell me what I want to hear. And that's not important. What's important is where is he at in his process. But it's hard to engage people the way the system is currently set up. It's very rare that you can find places that will do that. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to say, my son, that's the one thing he said when he started coming here, that he could come here and admit that he had something to drink.
That's right.
Not feel like he would be kicked out, whereas other places, I'm sorry.
What happens is unintentionally, people are good people, man, and they're not trying to, but unintentionally it becomes a win-lose game. And again, I think that that's a travesty, and I think that needs to be corrected, and I'm not sure it's going to be corrected on that, at a big level. But you guys need to know that as family, as friends, because you wind up a lot of times kind of being the primary message carrier, for better or for worse. You are actually the ones who know what's going down, and you may find yourself in those conversations where you have to say, go check out Favor. They are not going to tell you have to quit drinking. And what? No, I'm serious. I go to that group on Monday night. You're not going to, you just can go there and sort of start checking it out. And if you keep going, will you start to make different decisions? Now, when you start to talk about other substances, whenever you start to talk about opioids, this is the wild card, man, because even me, we are all right here with opioids right now. record-setting overdoses in Greenville County. Greenville is under siege. Make no mistake about it. All right, opioids and fentanyl rose by 158%. Opioids rose by 80%, and cocaine killed more people than heroin. So your loved ones need to know that they're not safe if they're doing cocaine. Believe it or not, cocaine is thought of as a safe drug these days. Fentanyl is being put into cocaine now too. You have a situation where that's going to make all of us get up here, right? Now, interestingly, you have other options. If it's an opioid, you can look at medication-assisted treatment. The Phoenix Center is open every single day for medication-assisted treatment that a person can go to. They can stay in the community then. They don't have to go off to rehab.
Can they just walk in there?
There's certain hours that they're open, but for the most part, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And then you get into all, yes ma'am.
Why do they put the fentanyl in?
So fentanyl is being put into, and also the other thing is the FBI like field division has been saying that fentanyl is increasing here for 3 or 4 years. Do you follow me? So this shouldn't even be that surprising. And they put fentanyl in cocaine to try to create a more addictive product. What happened is,
Because the drug users ask for something higher to make them higher.
no, they don't ask for it. They don't ask for it. They put it in there. It's product development. People think that the cartels are, what's that?
The user wants a better pie. So they-
Well, I mean, somebody who's a vet may say that, but for the most part, that's not what's going down. A lot of users don't even necessarily know what they're using, and it's not like you're going and you're buying something and you're actually selecting off, okay, let me get this. It's not a menu. You're just,
What you use too in your cocaine, like, so you don't need as much, you're putting something else in to replace.
Stretches it?
Yeah.
yeah, I'm gonna tell you exactly why it is. So here's exactly why it is. One is you can create more product, but the second thing that really gets misunderstood is that they lost a major share of the market when marijuana got legalized. So that's a $46 billion product that they own that now the federal government own, or the state governments own, okay? And they lost that money, and they are a multinational corporation. These are not people just dealing drugs. So they had to develop a new product. And the deal is, let's put it into this stuff because young people use cocaine now. I don't know if you know that or not. Exceedingly popular among college students. If I can put some fentanyl in here, which is about 40 times more addictive than cocaine, I can get a repeat customer. It has nothing to do with somebody actually like selecting it. It's put in there. It's literally developing a new product. Hey, we were making pizzas with pepperoni on them, right? And now somebody else started making pizzas with pepperoni, so we're gonna make pizzas with, I don't know, pineapples. Let's see what happens. Is that funny?
He doesn't like pineapple.
Oh, well, who does on pizza? But you all get the point, right? So, and they're trying to break into another market. And it's available now. So that is going to raise your level of concern, and that's probably going to make you say, let's get you into a facility today. Yes?
Is it the fentanyl industry or is it the cocaine industry?
They're the same.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, is there a chance that the fentanyl industry works to introduce that product into marijuana?
No. So fentanyl, what happened was fentanyl escaped like the actual lab, and people on the black market figured out how to make it. The cartels figured out how to make it. So it's not even really fentanyl, it's like fentanyl analogs. All right? And so what happens is they no longer have to grow fields of poppies to get heroin.
Right.
So you're going to see like, okay, we can manufacture this and get it out. And therefore, it's just easier distribution. It's an easier business model. It's easier to smuggle in and out because it's smaller. I don't think it cannot be put into, it's not going to be put in marijuana, guys. It's not. It won't be put in marijuana in this form. It may be down the road. There may be a way to put it in. But it can't be smoked. It cannot be smoked. And from what I understand, I am not a chemist at all, but there's something about the way that it holds on and binds that wouldn't work in that form.
But there was an article in the Greenville News just in the past couple of years that one little grain, like a grain of sugar, if you take a fentanyl the size of a grain of sugar, is enough to kill a person to overdose on.
Yeah, so the other thing is there's a really sensationalistic stories. And that totally gets our eye off the ball. We are not going to be destroyed by a grain of fentanyl. You can go to videos where people are handling it. I can handle fentanyl right here and it wouldn't kill me. There may be, what's that?
Fentanyl's used in surgery.
Yeah, there may be versions of it that aren't actually fentanyl, that are some kind of like super monster elephant drug, but that's not what's killing people. It's fentanyl or fentanyl analog, and it's being put in to distribute that way. It's interesting what the news likes to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Let's take the eye off of, we'll get our eye off the ball and we'll talk about one person who says they overdosed on a grain of fentanyl instead of talking about 172 people that died because of inappropriate services or whatever you want to call it. You follow me? Like lack of actual like community-based services contributed to this much more than a grain. Yes?
You've got addicts that come to meetings here that have said that they're, they want the fentanyl because they know what it is now. They know how to use it.
Yeah, there'll be some people who, that's still not the main thing, dude.
Well, I didn't say
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
the
I
main
mean,
thing.
we gotta, when we start hammering in on that stuff, what we do is we allow them to escape the pressure of like, how did you systematically mismanage this situation? And the deal is like, you got to get community-based services, Narcan, medication-assisted treatment, recovery coaches, all this stuff to chase people around, because you can't. It's almost like you can't let them have a mistake, right? There is no such thing as a mistake with fentanyl. So you got to get Favor Greenville hiding in the bushes outside the house, right? 24 hours, 7 day a week monitoring services. We will gear up in camouflage, get it, and ninja type outfits, right? That's actually just me talking through what I want to do. All right. What other questions about the brain, and what other questions about those type of issues? I'm gonna pull up some stuff on boundaries, but what other thoughts? Yes.
What happens if a person takes amphetamines and alcohol at the same time?
You can drink more.
Yeah.
You can drink more, is basically where you are with it. What other questions?
Over here, Rich.
Yes.
Hey, I have a question on with alcohol and somebody coming off the alcohol and the co-diagnosis of anxiety. It can get mixed up with just they've already detoxed, say, but this feeling of anxiety and wanting to get treated for that because they're not on alcohol. How does that? I don't
So the
know.
question was, what about co-occurring anxiety and the fact that coming off of alcohol produces anxiety? Which came first, the chicken or the egg? What do you deal with? We would say you try to, if a person is reporting severe anxiety, you try to get that treated too. You got to be careful where you get it treated and what you get it treated with. So there are ways to deal with anxiety and help somebody with anxiety that can be safe also from a recovery point of view. There are also ways you can deal with it where it gets tricky with benzodiazepines. And so you'll see sometimes somebody has an alcohol issue and you almost feel like they're seeking Xanax or Klonopin or Ativan. That's where you know there's something up.
Yeah.
So how do you know when something's up? Because I see that.
Yes.
So how do you know when it's the treatment for the mental disorder and when it's just a way to get more alcohol?
So hopefully what you do is you try to find a responsible psychiatrist who's going to take them through this and understand they don't have to get a benzodiazepine to get treated for anxiety. It's not either or, it's what do you treat it with. And God, I understand that like Xanax and Klonopin and Ativan, that's also the pharmaceutical company pushing that. That is not the preferred method of dealing with anxiety. That's the preferred method of feeling immediately better.
What drugs do you think treat anxiety?
I don't even know if drugs treat it, Carol. Like
antidepressants or.
technically SSRIs are supposed to, but
Benadryl works good.
what does?
Benadryl.
Well, there you go. Benadryl works good, and so I think that the deal is if you get somebody to go see a responsible person, you talk about talk therapy, you talk about are you going to meetings, are you talk about exercise, and you might talk about medication that is not a mood or mind altering medication because that will get abused as well. You guys get this? Like, so the deal is, am I trying to get treatment or am I trying to catch a feeling that I was getting kind of from alcohol?
Yeah.
Because what's the difference between 6 to 8 beers and 1 Xanax? I don't know, right? So like, you start to get into a situation. Xanax was originally designed to use for acute panic attacks, like getting on an airplane, driving over a bridge. Okay, but it's been expanded, so you got, it's more about what kind of treatment do they get, less about whether or not they have anxiety versus alcoholism. Does that make sense?
So
The-
is that why, so my daughter's at Morrisville,
Yep.
and at the family meeting last week, she said that alcoholism is like a mask for the mental disorders, and a lot of the mental disorders aren't real. But I know in my daughter's case, they're real.
So she
Yeah.
said that they weren't real.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you know, when you're a parent, you're sitting there and you know it's real, but then you know that they're over-treated a lot of times, because I'm gonna tell you, in a lot of the mental health and behavioral health places, they're overly medicated.
Yes.
Well, okay, so the deal here is a misunderstanding around what treatment is. All right, and you can make an argument that this is all of healthcare, not just behavioral health. We live in a culture where the answer is a pill. So when you have somebody who's complex and are dealing with two different issues, you'll start to just get pills. You'll leave with a Ziploc bag full of pills. And that's just because basically, let's try this one, let's try this one, let's try this one. So it goes back to that mental health does not equal medication. Do you guys get that? Like that was never the case. That's just really good marketing. Have you ever seen your average drug commercial?
Oh my God.
It is absolutely wonderful marketing. All right. So it's always like, you know, it's real dark, and then and then you like take the pill, and like literally like the butterflies come in, and you're like, whoa, yes, and like everybody's praising you and stuff, and then at the end, really quick, the voice comes on and says, "This may make your head fall off."
And you get diarrhea.
and you'll get diarrhea. Yeah. So you know that, guys, that is 100% pharmaceutical marketing is what that is. And I'm not saying people don't need to be on medication. Do you guys understand that? But what I'm saying is that equally effective to medication is, okay, think about it this way. A mental health issue or an addiction issue is considered a biopsychosocial problem. The biological part can be possibly addressed through medication. This is, maybe there's something up with the way I was born. Maybe there's something going on with my brain. The psychological part can be addressed through talk therapy, through individual therapy, group therapy, whatever that may be. The social part, a better way to say the biopsychosocial, the social part is keep moving, keep doing what you need to do, be around people. All right, because people want to isolate when they're dealing with this. So be around people, and all three of those together would be the best, right, to get evaluated. But understand, the other two are just as effective as the first. We've all been told that the only thing you can do is the first. So you got to get them to see a psychiatrist, and they get there and they tell the psychiatrist, I mean, hey, here's what I got going on. And the psychiatrist does his job. He treats the symptoms. And they walk out and not trying anything else. Do you guys get the theme here? If you have a loved one or a friend and they're dealing with this, the key is, like, can you get them pushed forward and invested in any kind of like regular type of programming? And obviously, again, we got to go to record. People will need more severe stuff, right? I'm not saying that, but can you get them engaged in something where they can start to figure this out? Carolyn?
Along those lines, one of the things we're talking about is trying to do a family meeting. And one of the questions is, what do you want the outcome to be?
Yes.
I just want them to get better.
You're gonna have to. This is a great question. So, we promote family friend meetings, whatever you want to call them. We don't call them interventions. We think it's appropriate at any time for any group of people who care about another person to get together and say, "Hey, man, I'm worried about you. Tell me about your drinking, right? Tell me about your using." You guys get that? Completely appropriate. And so one of the guidelines we give is you're gonna have this conversation, and whoever the point person is, you want to assign a point person. They're kind of like the family member who's running it. At the end, they have to ask for something. You can't just leave there without some kind of outcome. And Carolyn's question was, I just want her to get better. And Carolyn, you've heard me say before that won't work, right? Because there's not an actual action associated with it. And there's no right or wrong answer, but how would you answer that? Like if you had to, if you were on Jeopardy and it was the daily double, you know, I have no idea why I'm using that example.
5
But
meetings a week and a P-test a week.
so it would be, here's what I want you to do in order for, you know, this is what I think will help you get better. And you know, I'm your mom and I'm just telling you where I'm at with it. We would recommend when you go in there that you have an upper limit and a lower limit, okay? So maybe it's 3, Carolyn. If you wanted a real recommendation, I would say, but you don't go in there saying 3.
Go in
You
there
want-
saying 10, right?
Well, if you want to go to 5, you get where I'm coming from? You want to say, and you want to keep in mind, like if she could get anything moving forward, would you think that would be good?
Yeah.
That's a really, really great plan. It's a great idea. It's a great process. You could try it once and you could go back the next time and say, we're going to ask for 1. But you get how it has to be specific. It can't be, we just want you to get help. I was told that all the time. I never had any idea what that meant. You know what I mean? I thought going over to my buddy's house, smoking weed all night and drinking, I just got help. Yep. Yes.
Okay, so when you were talking about the part about the chicken and the egg, that's something that we've been dealing with because we didn't really know, could be both, but don't know if it's a mental problem or drug addiction. And he was the one that told us it was a drug addiction, or at least that's the one piece. And he's a very compartmental person. So I sort of feel like that we have to take off, you know, start peeling off the onion and deal with one thing at a time, because it's really, you know, for us, it's almost impossible to figure out, do we have anxiety issues? Do we have other mental issues? You know, you're seeing a counselor or a psychiatrist, but are they doing that? Or all they doing is meeting with you and filling out the pills, or what's going on here? So I felt a little bit more relief to hear, even though we don't really know what the full diagnosis is, I felt a little bit more relief to know that he's admitting I have an addiction and I need to deal with that first.
Do you guys have any idea? I'm about to use bad language, please don't judge me. Do you have any idea how much bullshit there is in your average mental health diagnosis and your average drug and alcohol diagnosis?
Yeah.
It is so imprecise. They sell it like it's actually like an x-ray. There's 2 different types of medicine. One is precision medicine and one is called intuitive medicine. Precision medicine is I can look exactly what's going on with you and I can tell you, here's what's wrong and here's what you need to do. You have a broken leg. Look, here's the x-ray right there. It's broken. It's fractured femur. We're going to put you in a cast. You're going to be in a cast for 8 weeks. Then you're going to come out and have to do rehab and you're going to be okay. That is called precision medicine. Your appendix needs to come out. Precision medicine. The world sells addiction treatment and mental health treatment like it's precision medicine. It is 100% intuitive.
What if they were diagnosed before the addiction?
It doesn't matter.
Then
It's
I-
still just a diagnosis of what. Do you guys understand how a diagnosis works? Joni comes in and I ask her questions about what's going on in her brain and she tells me stuff and I interpret them as something and I could have interpreted them as 23 different things. It's the only, guys, we diagnose people and we never even actually look at the organ that we're diagnosing. At no point is she in a PET scan that can say like, look, this is the part of your brain that's not working right. Now there are some mental health diagnoses that tend to be pretty accurate. One is schizophrenia, all right? Hearing voices, fixed delusions. The second is either unipolar, like deep depression, deep clinical depression, multiple suicidal episodes, not being able to get out of bed at all falls into that. Bipolar type 1 would fall into that. You get into certain things where it's a little bit more evident. But I'm going to tell you the ones like anxiety, you're throwing a dart in the dark.
Yeah.
But when you go, do you understand there's no one that's going to tell you all that?
No.
They're not going to tell, and they're going to criticize me for telling you that because, well, you're driving people away from the psychiatric profession. Well, here's what I'm telling you. Do not change your medicine. Do not change your medicine, but understand you are going to have to become educated.
NAMI is good.
NAMI is a good place to go that's going to help you get educated. You're going to have to understand what the side effects are. You're going to have to understand, what the potential symptoms are. I'm going to tell you a story on how this works. This is from somebody who worked in the system for 13 years in the city of Pittsburgh. All right? So, here's the scenario. You got a guy, and he's... Oh, by the way, did anybody see... This has nothing to do with anything. I don't know if anybody's seen the cover of the Sports Illustrated and the Cleveland Browns are on it.
What's up with that?
I mean, that's sickening.
That's right.
That's a sign of the end times. But anyway, I'm sorry, I just had to say that because I'm about to tell a Steelers story. So here's the deal. Here's the scenario. You got a guy, let's say early 30s, all right? And his whole entire life, he just struggled with like low-grade kind of feelings of depression. People have worried about him, said stuff to him. He's always kind of felt he was worthless. He's always been a little bit hopeless, but he's never been diagnosed with anything, never, gotten any kind of help. But it's always been there, and his family's been worried. He also is a drinker. He'll get hammered at any given time, but nothing really bad has happened, and he hasn't gotten in any trouble, so he's never been diagnosed with an alcohol problem, all right? That's the scenario. So the guy goes to a football game, Steeler game, and drinking at the tailgate, goes into the game, and, drinks a little bit more at the game, gets in his car, drives home, makes it home, and whenever, but he's hammered. And when he gets home, his wife comes to the door. She's holding the baby. She says, I told you if that happens again, I'm out. She gets in the car and she drives away. All right? He enters the system, guys. He enters the system, and he's primarily diagnosed through the mental health door. How you like that picture? That's fantastic. That is the actual solution to the opioid epidemic right there. It's my DEA hat. Do you see what happened? He entered the same dude, gets in the car after the Steeler game and gets a DUI. He's an alcoholic. Do you see how this is? It's that arbitrary.
There is no middle.
It's not an actual process other than where do you enter the system and who's going to be paying for you.
Yeah.
Do you follow that? From an insurance standpoint, and remember, Pittsburgh's a big Medicaid state, so that a lot of this was driven through Medicaid. And I would have people that would be the same person who would come into two different doors, and I had to treat them differently depending on what door they were in. What we had to do with them depended. This is why Favorite Greenville has got to exist. I'm not saying that because I have an agenda, guys. I'm just telling you, we are the only hope. This is never going to work. You all don't even know what to make of it. You don't even know what to think of this. Is it mental health? Is it addiction? What is the deal? What am I dealing with here? What do I call it? Do I take them and get them on this medication because this is good for them? Or maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I shouldn't put them on any medication. Maybe I should make them go to meetings. Am I getting it right?
Yeah.
Is that kind of how it is?
Yep.
And then you spend all this time trying to figure it out because what you hope happens is you open one of these doors and you get a definitive answer because then you'll know exactly what to do. And I totally get that. And maybe that's how it should be, but I'm going to tell you that's not how it is. So what's the answer to this is, when in doubt, do both. Okay, I'm going to take you through how it works. So you go in one door, let's say it's the door with the suicide. He's now primarily a mental health guy. He's going to get whatever medicine comes down. He's probably going to be talked to a little bit about maybe AA, but not a lot. It's going to be primarily what? Let's change your depression. As we change your depression, your drinking will change. Okay, and then over time, maybe we'll send you to get some help for substances. Same thing the other way, right? I mean, alcohol, this used to be bad. They used to be telling people back in the day, go off all your meds. You're depressed because you drink too much. And then he goes and he goes, that's not healthy. What we think is you got to treat each one as being primary, and each one makes the other worse. And so you got to get help for both at the same time. How do you do that? Favorite Greenville helps you with the substance use, and perhaps you get a psychiatrist going to help with the mental health. But you educate yourself, and there's a couple things about this, if I can give you real tangible advice. Let's say it's a kid. Let's say it's a kid and you feel like you have some influence and control over the situation. Do not take him to a psychiatrist, unless he signs a release of information where you can be involved. Mm-hmm. If they do not want you to be in a room, it's not because they're afraid you're going to hear some deep, dark secret. You guys know your average psychiatric appointment is 7 minutes. The deepest, darkest thing discussed is, you know, what's your date of birth? How to go this week. Do you understand? Like, you're not interrupting any kind of actual, there's no information being exchanged in there that's gonna get you, that's gonna be revealing to you.
So where do you get talk therapy? Where do you get?
So talk therapy is just a straight up therapist. Now this is different. A psychiatrist is what? An MD who's chosen that profession. The best place to find talk therapy is on a website called Psychology Today. Hands down, the best place. Let's pull it up.
Or Favors webpage.
No, I wouldn't even say favors. Seriously. No, I wouldn't. See, this is the difference. See what just happened there? I'm going to give an actual assessment. I'm just not going to endorse it because it's favor. Favors is very, very limited. All right? For one thing, for talk therapy. Do you get the difference? Like, that's where you want to go for rehab. That's where you want to go. You follow what I'm saying?
We have some good therapists. We've got a thing for therapists too, but I get your drift.
You get my drift? But either way, okay, go to the favor site. It's fantastic.
Cause it's easier.
We spent a lot of time on that, a lot of research.
But you did it, just to be clear, it has all kinds of stuff on it, not just individual therapists.
Right.
It has rehabs, it has recovery housing.
Right.
All kinds of great resources.
Here you go. This is a really good site to go to, and the reason is because of this verification part. So I'm on this site, and you got to go through to get on there. Like, you're not, and you can type in, give me a zip code, 29607, and you can do searches like you can on anywhere else.
And this doesn't have psychiatrists per se.
You'll probably find up a psychiatrist occasionally, but mostly it's going to be therapists. And you can read what they got going on, and you can call, and you can shoot an email and say, like, what do you do? What insurance do you take? This is much better because it's just, I mean, this is everybody in the area, guys, who's any good. Yes, sir.
Is there online therapy that a person can do using the computer, talking to somebody?
There's online therapy. There is Talkspace, TALKSPACE, Talkspace. There's also, I mean, I keep telling you, you know, if you have a loved one and they're resistant to it, like, one of the things to do is to get them on. I'm not trying to self-promote, but get them into our YouTurn platform, youturn.net. It's $2.95 a month. It is an online platform, education services. It's literally me talking people through different scenarios. We just did a relapse prevention scenario.
Oh, it's you?
It's me. Let me see.
So it's basically talk therapy through online.
It's talk therapy. It's not talk therapy. It's education. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Is it YOU or?
Here it is. Okay.
Me too.
What happened?
I just
Because
did
like
two,
a
you
automated-
know, like a U.
No.
Okay, YOU.
On this platform, here's what you have. So this is what you'll land on after you get on. And you have different sections that you can go to. So you have education that you can go to. And you can pull up, once it comes on up, you can pull up all kinds of different stuff. This stuff is right now restricted to colleges, but we'll open it up to everybody. Okay?
The education portion?
Not all of it, just the alcohol and the weed. So let's just see a little bit of this. Hello, welcome. My name is Rich Jones. I'm the CEO of Faces and Voices of Recovery in Greenville, South Carolina. I'm also a co-founder of Use Disorder. And I'm not going to go through this because I can't stand my own voice. I did so many of those videos. By the time I went home, I saw my wife. I'm like, "Hey, Melissa, my name is Rich Jones. I'm the CEO of Faces and Voices of Recovery and a co-founder here at YouTurn." But these are all educational videos across different topics. And your loved one, the deal would be to go on there. And it's not talk therapy, but it would be motivational and it would be engaging, and it does actually like focus on therapeutic issues. It's just not the exchange.
Yeah.
So it might be best for somebody who's not sure whether they have a problem or not. This is, really good stuff that the family can use. This has all kinds of stuff in it about, look, there's the brain I just did. You could have them watch the brain.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's not going to have that back and forth of talk therapy. So that's an aspect of it, and you could explore that. Then we have stories on here. This is meant to give people hope and make them understand that they're not alone. That happens when you go to a recovery meeting. If you're not in a recovery meeting, where do you get it? You get it online. All these people talking about their stories, all kinds of different issues. You know, some of them you recognize.
Are you saying this is not available yet?
This is available if you go to youturn.net. You'll see it'll say personal or business. This is sold mainly to businesses. This is sold mainly to hospitals, but we've also opened it up for the public now.
But you said you pay for it every month?
It's $2.95 a month. It's a subscription service. $2.95. Okay. Well, I mean, for an individual session, it costs $125 one time. And what we think is, and again, you could go to, and then this is Conversations, is exclusive content related to a podcast we do. It's myself and Edwin McCain. Edwin McCain is in recovery, and we do a podcast that we release every week that can only be seen by people on the platform. This is just interesting information. Do you follow? So what we're trying to do here, if you can bear with me, is we're literally trying to emulate the recovery process. First, what happens when a person starts to figure out whether they have a problem or a family needs, you have to learn about it. That's the first thing, right? The second thing is to try to get inspired and realize you can change. And the third thing would be our version of online social kind of stuff, which is, this is just straight entertainment. And this is just straight entertainment. This is, we do the great marijuana debate on the on this episode. We talk about the opioid epidemic. We talk about tough love. We talk about all that stuff. This was not designed. We weren't going to push it out to the public we started to think about it. Like, look, if this is something that'll help, get on there and get it, and look at what videos you think may help your loved one.
Yeah.
Give them access to it and say, watch this video with Rich when he's talking about opioids. We have people on the education series, guys, that are on medication-assisted treatment. We have a doctor on here, Dr. Jim Harper. He talks about the mechanism of this. This is not a back and forth deal. Not yet. It appears that's not where we wanted to be with this right now. This is all about how do you get information to a person who doesn't want it. If you really want to dig into what you guys, that's what you guys are dealing with. If your loved one faithfully came to see me or came to Favor, it would not be perfect, but you would feel better.
Yeah.
If they came every week. Do you know what I mean by faithfully? I don't mean like once every 3 months. If they faithfully came, you would start to feel better. Why would you start to feel better? Because you would know they were getting some information and things were starting to get better. And maybe there was a shot that things could improve because it's not just them trying to figure it out on their own. Perhaps this becomes an interim. A tool. You can also hit up my blog, The Recovery Cartel. It has everything on it. It's not nearly the, what do you want to call it, the quality. It's really no quality. It's just me on my phone, right? But you can go there and you can get, there's all the blogs and there's all the videos and there's instructional material for you on there. So if you go to Family Recovery on here, what's that?
Is that under Favor?
No, that's under recoverycartel.com. This is my alter ego.
Recovery Cartel.
This is where I go, where I really get to say the incendiary stuff. And I get away with it.
We're going to get to see your dark side.
This is the dark side over here. And it also has a lot of instructions for y'all on here.
Also known as Rich's Rants.
You can go on the Facebook page, or you can go on my YouTube page too.
The car rants.
Yeah, that's where the car rants are on the YouTube page. So this is also, but you guys get the general idea. Get it to them.
Yeah.
This is my kids go on my computer. I am not looking at Legos. I want y'all to know that. All right.
That's therapeutic. So what are the hospitals buying this for? To put in the
we have all kinds of, there's all kinds of specialty stuff that they buy. So they would never buy the whole thing, but they would buy like the stuff for MAT, for example.
Okay.
We've also been picked up and asked to create content specific for opioid prevention.
Have you seen that thing? We were at a doctor's office today and they had this rolling screen like that.
Yeah.
And it pops up with opioids and...
Yep. What you're seeing, guys, is the world, especially the world outside the treatment/recovery bubble. The rest of the world is starting to try to develop new ways of connecting to people. But you guys are all right in the middle of the actual problem, and that is, I'm his mom, I'm his dad, I'm his best friend, I'm his wife, or whatever it is, and I am like the only one talking to him about it, and I'm the only one trying to figure it out.
Right.
And so what do? We try to get him into rehab, right?
Right.
That's because that's a logical thing to do. But what I'm suggesting is, if they won't do that, will they do anything? Your question is fantastic, and you think through what you want to do and understand. I don't tell people exactly what they say, but what do I want them to do? And I will take 3 meetings a week or 1 meeting a week or whatever it is. Then get something going, which is better than nothing. And maybe this stuff helps in the meantime.
Yeah.
What other thoughts or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hey, this may be a little different. We have someone who is not a family member, but a friend. He has no close family, and so there's no single one of us who is kind of leading the charge to help him. He's very recently intersected with Favor.
Yep.
That is hopeful to us, but he doesn't know we're here. He doesn't know we talk to each other as much as we do, and know that yes, he's an addict, yes, he's relapsed, he's drinking, he's using to a dangerous degree. I don't want to do anything to out him now that he may be starting on a good path, but I also don't want to get in a car with him and let him
So I think
drive
it's a
me.
fantastic question, and the other thing is, it's fantastic that you're here to get this information. You know, it's a little delicate because of what you said, where you feel like there's positive momentum, you kind of think, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, the general principle, guys, would be, if you think about what the deal is with you being here, you're not here to punish anybody. You're here for good things, and so I think it's perfectly okay at some point in time for you to say, like, look, I love you, I'm worried about you, you're my friend, I'm not necessarily going to get in a car with you, but I understand you're trying to get this together. That's awesome. You got to remember, this is good that you're here. This is not about, like, let's ambush anybody. This is a healthcare issue. We see it as a healthcare issue. You could tell them, especially if it came up that you were here, you could say something like, and we learned that what's going down is exactly, we're worried about it. We recommend you don't confront and you don't, come at it like that. But we also recommend it's okay to talk about, and it's definitely okay to say, I'm not getting in the car. Why are you not getting in the car? I only had 2 beers. Well, listen, that's cool, but I'm learning about this. We're trying to learn how to figure this out. You can also, how do you want to say this? One of the things that I always recommend is kind of like, you can play dumb to a certain degree, and you can say, I'm not an expert at this. It's not my job to figure out how much you should drink or not drink. I just know I can't be part of this, man. I gotta make sure I'm taking care of myself and also taking care of you.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Well, when we go to those groups on Monday night, they tell us about making sure that we're not unintentionally reinforcing the behavior. Invite them to the group. You know what I mean? The point is, this is absolutely okay for you guys to talk about. It's 100% cool that you're here. When we are in active addiction, we don't necessarily like it that our family members are here, but we love it that our family members are here. I'm telling you, that's a 100% truth. We are thankful that you're here. We don't like it in the moment, though, because it goes back to, protecting the addiction. Do you know how many people have...
Are you still going to Monday night?
I mean, I will tell you how many people have said to me about someone else, they were lucky they had somebody that cared about them enough to go there. I mean, I'm not making it up. The person is not the way we think they are. Like, they're not belligerent, obnoxious, get the F out of my world. They're scared, they're hurting, but again, they want to protect it. To your question earlier, why would they not tell the truth? Because they don't want to quite go there. They don't want to declare, I have this problem, or I have this problem again. You know, like...
So, Rich, when I see this
Yep.
friend of ours tomorrow morning, I got to see him on business, should I tell him I was here?
Yes. I happen to know this situation, I would absolutely tell you. And I got to tell you, like, he will be real down with it. I'm telling you, and again, it's that made for television crap that we've been told that the person is just trying to hide it from everybody. And, in any given moment we are, because remember, what we're doing is we're trying not to get in trouble. We're trying to not get this blown up. But we want people to know. We know what's going down, man. What would be a reason not to bring it up would be if they were so far, so deep that you feel like you couldn't even have a reasonable conversation. You get that part? Like, you might have somebody that's so far, and maybe they're actively using, you don't want to bring it up then. you want to try to avoid, no, I mean actively using it in the moment.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
that
yeah.
I could, right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. Well, and you also don't want to. The other thing I would recommend is don't get into trying to like get them to admit what they were doing or not. You want to say things like, "We just care too much to not say anything. We checked out Favors group. Yeah, and we learned a lot. We're worried about you. Is there anything going down?" And because be careful if you start trying to figure it out. I don't know if you guys have ever done that. That could be an exercise in frustration. You were drinking last Wednesday. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. No, I wasn't. It was Tuesday, right? It's like you missed it by a day. You can get into a circular conversation that actually can be counterproductive. All right, so I got one more thing I got to go over. This real quick. This Wednesday, and I talked about this once, but Russell had to reschedule. So we have Russell Stahl is coming in to do a focus group. Russell has nothing to do with Favor. He's not on the board. He is not on our payroll. He is an independent person who's going to come in and he wants to talk to people about how Favor's doing. We're bringing him in, paying him to do this because we want somebody outside the recovery bubble. And we want you, can anybody be there? If you can, wherever that sign-up sheet is, if you can turn one of those over. I need at least 5 or 6 people who can make it on Wednesday.
What time?
6:30. I can get you food. I'll bribe you with food. I won't be here. And I won't be in the room with y'all. You'll be just you and Russell. We want you to tell them what we're doing well, what we're doing not so well, but maybe more important than anything, any ideas you have for things that we should be doing. One of the fantastic things about Favor Greenville is we've been able to create programs based on suggestions. In almost everything we're doing, somebody came up with an idea, other than me.
Does it matter how long you've been coming here?
Doesn't matter. One day or a year or whatever. Yes, sir.
How long will that last?
It'll last an hour at most. Okay. Can you get a sign-in sheet here? All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up, guys. That's all we have for tonight. We will see you next Monday is Labor Day. I thought this Monday was Labor Day, but next Monday is Labor Day. 2 weeks. We'll see you back here. Go forward and, I don't know, set a boundary or something. Oh, shoot, I forgot now. Too late now, dude.